color, right? Like how to use color. And it seems like people who are doing these buildings don't understand how to use color.
Like there's that one building I see like when I'm walking down to downtown, like it's just like all these horrible like dark shades of yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, who thinks that looks good?
I know. Well, for the longest time, they were stuck doing rust, sage, and like sort of a lemony yellow or mustard yellow color. It was like this mid-1990s.
I don't think they're actually planning them for looks. They're just they got a template.
Like cool stuff like in southern Chile, they do some really cool color combinations. Like there's one house that was just like it was like split in two. One half was like just like a dark orange, light orange with a dark orange trim. The other one was like dark brown with like a lime green trim.
Yeah,
that looked cool.
There's lots of places in like Portugal, and you'll see a lot of great
Yeah,
colors.
but that was on a Craftsman style house. That looked awesome.
Yeah.
Like you can like innovate within like the architectural style that we
And it
already
doesn't have to
have.
cost a lot of money. You
And
just
it
have to
doesn't
have
have to
one.
look like crap either.
Yeah.
You can
I
do
remember
it.
somewhere in Eastern Europe, someplace that used to be under Soviet control, whoever was in charge of that territory was a little lax on things, and people would, because all the houses had to be like the same. But people would do like these really crazy like designs, so they would paint the color on their house and patterns and stuff. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I feel like people should do that with the really boring, things that are going down and just be like, let's go crazy.
Yeah, because the
Solution, but I don't
there's
think
been also
There's no
I
way
think
for
there
me
was
to get
some
like all of the app code
like
and
favelas in Brazil that it's just like, yeah, every house just gets to be a different color. Just paint it one color, each one, and it actually turned out really nice, just the way it all
Is
together.
there a workaround?
Sounds
But
very
I can't
conservative with colors,
upload,
like just like the housing colors are all like these muted colors.
Services.
And
Yeah, I mean,
From
up in
ASP for
grays
other
and
class.
browns.
Oh, you mean
I'm
if
not saying
getting
it's
them into
like
IIS or
that,
something?
Yeah.
No,
Uh,
I
just,
don't like the.
I would like to share a service
Oh,
with
yeah,
my,
yeah, sure.
with my group, but I can't,
I
my
think-
GitHub is like
Yeah, I
on,
think
I think there needs to be a.
You're
balance.
good.
in the
Yeah, well, I think
desktop
there have been some that seem that are
inside
better than
the
others,
VM on
like
my
every once in a while
computer,
come
so I
across one.
can't
I mean,
You
it's
can't
still a big
upload it.
boxy
You
thing,
could
but, you know,
copy the
at least
file
looks
out
better
of the
than
virtual
most
machine and
but
upload
it's
it
pretty rare.
from the underlying machine.
and it would contain all of the necessary files.
It could, I mean, you could,
No.
one of the things you could do is just zip the
Maybe
whole
the thing
thing
we're trying to
and
do now
bring it
is
out.
the,
Uh,
we'll
and
do,
then-
like,
And
the
then
first
upload it.
one,
And then upload it.
and then, like, the top
Upload it
two.
at home, or you could even upload it on the underlying machine. You might be able to do it with the bash file too. I mean, if you know the
You're
command.
saying.
There's a command line way to upload it. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, we have until the 23rd.
Yes, in fact, although I shouldn't say this, I will probably accept them through the weekend after final. Because my grades will be due Monday.
I love that.
Will you be around at all next week?
I'll be around, well, next week's a regular week, so it's just open lab next week.
Oh,
Like, for some reason.
Yeah, and then
like, it's
the
just-
week after that is
Yeah, like,
finals,
one
and I'll
section
be
where
here
it's, like,
those
brown,
3
there's, like,
days.
So we have class next week.
We have class, but it'll be open.
Okay.
So you'll be fine. I think everybody will be fine. So are you guys almost ready? So one of the things I'm doing is I'm going to go into Canvas just to look at the XML assignment. We may go out of the virtual machine for a moment in a while. Visual Studio, which I didn't load into the virtual machine, has a nice feature. If you have an XML file, you can just say click and it'll create a, create schema, and it creates a schema for you for XML. You can certainly write them by hand. I have, but it's a lot more work. So let me get down. I have a lot of courses open here. I have two 222s. I need to make sure that's spring, so we want the winter one. And so assignments. This is just partially to show you what the XML features of SQL Server are different databases have different features or lacks of them. Do you guys know, one reason I'm here is that I gave you the XML, I gave you the schema, and I gave you the XML file to look at. But I'll show you a little bit about how we create them too. Do you guys know much about XML at all? What do you know? That's probably the, well, not really. So much.
It's like HTML, but you can create your own tags, right?
Right. Basically, it's a markup language, so it's tag language, but it's whatever language you want to make. I mean, basically, it's really not, and this drove me nuts when I first started because I'm used to learning languages that have keywords and syntaxes and etc. And what XML is really just a set of about 10 rules. Every tag, you can make a tag. It's not case sensitive. Unlike, it is case sensitive, but it's not limited to lowercase, is what I meant to say, like XHTML was. So if you do uppercase in the beginning, you have to do uppercase at the end. Every opening tag has to have an end tag. Every tag has to be rested in a root, so like HTML is the root in HTML. So you have an HTML at the beginning, and HTML at the bottom. What other? There are a few character rules that you can use and not use. Attributes need to be quoted. It's basically you can make up your own XML
What's an attribute?
terms. An attribute. So if you've done HTML.
No.
No. Okay. An attribute is inside of a tag. You can do like. So you have a tag, say.
So you have like an image, and then you have source.
Image, yeah,
and then
source
that's where your
equal.
image is.
You never done HTML much?
Just in ASP.NET for.
Yeah, so we do. Well, actually, when you think of the ASP.NET, so you do like that's XML. So when you do the, say the drop-down list, name ID equals, that's a attribute.
Okay.
Source equals server, right? Or run at equals server. Those are all attributes. So anybody know what XML is used for and why it would be relevant to a database? One of the things that it's really good at is just that, sending for messages. Again, in the ASP.NET class, all of the talk between the client and the server is done as XML. It's all XML files passed back and forth. Now, there's other ways to do that, and actually the more modern way is JSON, because it's lighter weight. The XML gives you more information. Talking between databases is often done with XML too. Partially because, so it used to be, just to go back, if you were doing business on the internet, right, and you had a company that wanted to invoice another company and you wanted the things to go directly to their database, you had to agree on your software, right, because it was all binary. You're passing binary files. You couldn't, you basically had to agree that you're all using Oracle, you're all using this invoice system, you're all doing that. With XML, it's just text, and it's structured text, and it's easily processed because the structure is strict, so it's fairly easy to code against. XML allowed you could make use whatever software you wanted. They could use whatever software you want. You just pass them an XML file. They format it in whatever system they have. So it made clients could be based. It didn't matter anymore. A pretty good way to transfer. It's a little bit better than most JSON in that it can preserve information, and some things like that. A little bit of that in JSON. What the data type is for the different columns and things like that. The other thing that XML is used for, which isn't as relevant, but it is a little bit relevant to databases, is that it has become the default document structure for all documents pretty much. PDFs have an XML definition. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all are XML files underneath. So is Open off Google Docs. And in fact, they agree on the advantage when you're dealing with big data. It's binary, so you can search the content of all these documents. And so with big data things, you can not only look, not only pull up the documents, you can search out parts of the document. So XML is everywhere. It really is. If you look underneath what's going on, in fact, if you looked at your iTunes playlist, it's an XML file. XML is everywhere. The thing about it is that when it's working really well, it's invisible because it's machine talking to machine, right? It's developers need to deal with it once in a while, but for the most part, it's all happening underneath things. Okay, does that make any sense? So one of the things you can do, and I'm going to just use Community Assist. So one of the things they've done here is they've given it so you can take relational data and you can output it as XML. So I'm going to do, actually just going to do select star from person, and I'm going to say for XML raw. And there's different ways to output XML. Raw is the most primitive way. And I'm going to show you what that does, and then we'll refine it a little bit, and then we'll do a different version of the letting out XML. So the for XML raw, notice it's all blue. Those are keywords. One of the most recent additions to the SQL standard, the ANSI standard in the International Standards Organization, the ISO standard, is there's rules for handling XML. So I'm going to do this. Do not support. Oh, so I probably need to list fields. It doesn't like the binary. It doesn't like the hash. So I'm going to do, so let's just do person, last name, person, first name. What else do we have in there? We have their person email. What do I have in person?
Username.
Person username. That's probably enough, although we'll probably try that should work. Okay, so notice it's got this thing down here. One, it gives a unique ID to this. And down here, this is like a hyperlink. If I click it, every row is an element here, and all of the columns are attributes. That's the default for raw. And so it's just row. Anybody know why this row has a red underline? I don't expect you to, I'm just asking.
Spelled wrong?
No, there's no root element. Right, we don't have any containing element. So it's interpreting this as the root, but then when that repeats, it says, no, you can't do that if that's the root. Right, so there's no root element. This is what they call an XML fragment, which is fine, actually, because you might be wanting to paste this into an existing XML document on the web somewhere. Right, so you wouldn't want a root element for that. But if you wanted it to be a complete element, you would want it. This is I think it's a real ugly way to do this, and we can refine this. Does that make sense of what you see there? And again, this is something you would probably send to a machine. So I'm going to change it a little bit. XML raw. and I'm going to say elements. Now, do I need width? I don't think I need width. Oh, I know, comma. All right. So when I do this, it's going to look a little different. Notice how it's still got the container as row, but these are now elements instead of attributes. Does that make sense? Each one is a tag instead of just being an attribute. If I go back to the earlier version, and then you had an attribute, person last name equal Alberts, person first name equal J, person username equals J Anderson, right? Those are attributes. When I say elements, then they are turned into tags. I prefer this. In terms of working with it, it makes zero difference, right? It's just as easy to work with attributes as it is to work with elements. So it makes zero difference. I just like to look at this a little better. I'm going to fix it up a little bit more too in a second.
I like the Tom Baker.
The Tom Baker?
Yeah.
Where is Tom Baker?
Oh, it was like he's somewhere later on.
Yeah, yeah. I could list all, what is it now, 12
I just
doctors?
saw TARDIS pass, and I was like,
Yeah. Been watching that stuff since the 80s, which is so.
I remember being on PBS.
Yeah, and it still is actually in Tacoma. It's the only place in the world actually still showing classic Doctor Who's on a regular basis. I got addicted to it, I think, when I first saw the bubble wrap monster. You know, and the scripts are sometimes really good. I mean, it's real uneven over the 30 years that it was on originally.
Yeah. But when it's good, it's really good.
Yeah. So let's do, any questions on this so far? So what we're doing is we're just outputting this as an XML. And again, the reason you would do this is not for internal use, it would be for exporting. I'm going to go back to the SQL. All right, so there's a couple of things. I'm going to add root, and then we need to tell it what the root is going to be. So we've got, this is from person. Let's do the root as person. Or actually, let's just do the root as people. So I did a comma, and I just added root to this. Okay, and I did put it in quotes. So it won't be an XML fragment anymore. It has a root element, and at the very bottom, it will close the root element, right at the very bottom of the document. So it's not an XML fragment anymore, it's a complete XML document. The other thing I might do is get rid of row. And then once we've done that, that's about as far as you can go with raw.
So the only reason this
Yeah.
is a complete and gave it the root.
Because it has a root, right? One of the rules of XML is that every document has to have a root. Oh.
If you were to execute this in like a browser, it looks like it's almost complete with generating a complete table, right?
You could generate a table. Now, browsers vary on how they display XML.
Okay.
So some don't display it at all unless you've attached a style sheet. Some will have a built-in style sheet and will display it kind of looking like this.
Yeah.
And some will just display the data, just as rows of data, but without much structure. So if you wanted to do this, like load this into with ASP.NET, it's really easy. You make the SQL call, like I've made it, right? And then you attach, you can read this directly into a object. They have objects that will read it. So they have like table dot load XML. That's, and then in the parentheses you say what XML you're loading. And then you can attach that table to like a grid object, and it's instantly displayed in a grid. So I mean, you can do that without any programming. I mean, like 3 lines. In PHP, you would probably have to load this and then loop through the document and distribute the elements into the table. But it's not hard to do. And it's actually a very common thing to do because it's an easy way to transfer the data. Now you can transfer the data directly from a database, but sometimes, depending on what you're doing with it, sometimes this is better. And also a lot of times, like with a service or something, they don't want you to touch the database directly, so they may just pass it as XML. So, you know, they do all the, they don't know what you want to do with it. So as XML, it leaves your options wide open, you know. Okay, the last thing we can do with this is right beside raw, if I were to put person, and then we were to run this again, the row becomes replaced with person. I'm gonna pop this back so it looks a little more structured. This is as far as you can go with raw. Raw is pretty primitive. Doesn't allow you a lot of, you know, a lot of flexibility. For one thing, it only works with things that it doesn't allow any deeper hierarchies. You know, this is about as deep a hierarchy as you can get. But actually, if you're just transmitting tabular data, this works real easily because it's pretty easy to reconvert this into a table.
Are you going to show us how to do that?
I'm going to show, well, no,
Maybe like,
that takes programming.
there's no easy way to just like pop it into an Excel spreadsheet.
You know, I don't know, it might read it just fine, actually. You can, in Excel, you can take any spreadsheet and export as XML. Although it's natively XML, but you can get rid of all the Excel stuff and just do it as raw XML. And I'm pretty sure it'll import it pretty fine. I don't have Excel in this virtual. Office, I mean, Word, I think just, I don't know how it would read it, if it would. You can do it in Notepad. I mean, it's just text. Okay. But I wasn't going to show you that, as I said, because it gets away from SQL into more the C# client programming stuff, or PHP or Java. I mean, they all have XML tools. All right. So this is raw. This is raw fully. I probably should have done multiple versions of this so you could see it build up. I want to show you one other. There's 3 ways to do, I think there's actually 4, but there are 3 primary ways to do XML. There's XML raw. We're going to do the next one is XML auto. Auto allows for a deeper embedding, a deeper hierarchy, and it works real well for joins and things like that, so I'll try to show you that. And then there's XML explicit. And what XML explicit is that you design your XML document. Basically what you have to do is you have to take every column in your select and say exactly how it's going to fit into the resulting XML hierarchy. So you actually have to design your XML document in the query. I'm not going to do that one because that one takes some time. And you have to have some idea what you're doing. Not sure. But you can explicitly map every single column that you're going to use to an XML position. You have to use XPath to do that too. All right, so it's a bit more complex. But let's do let's do like select service name. Grant key. Grant, what is it? Service grant explanation? What? No, what is it? It's a grant. I've used these databases for years, and I can't remember.
What table are you in?
Service grant. I want grant need explanation. And grant amount. Okay. So the service, what I'm going to try to do is, so I'm going to do from community service. Which I'm going to alias as service. Inner join service grant. And I'm going to alias this as grants. On, service, I think square bracket service. Dot service key equal grants dot service key. There's a reason I'm not doing my usual one letter. Aliases, because if you do one letter, that's what the tag will be. Like if I just did S for service, community service, that's what the tag would be, is S. So it's nicer to get something a little bit more. Now, so just to show you, so what we've got here should be, right, we've got transportation, we've got the grant key, should be more than that. We've got the service name, the grant key. Why is there only 5 grants? What did I do?
My table doesn't have those columns.
You don't have grant need explanation?
No.
Grant
I don't have
key.
grant key. I have 89 rows.
That's what I should have. What did I do wrong? Oh, I did person key. I did person key. Brain gone. Service key.
I thought you were showing some new.
No, I'm just having my usual brain farts. Yeah, 89 rows is what you should have. What I want to do, if we do the XML right, there should be a grouping for service and a subgroup for all the grants under that service, right? And then so we'll group it. If I remember exactly. So let's do for XML auto. We do want elements. Do we want a root? I guess we could do root. I have no idea what to do with the root. Let's call it root. Let's see if this works. So we've got an inner join here. I'm going to execute this. So we have food. You know what? We might have to group by. Or I mean, not group by, but order by. Let's try that, because that isn't quite what I want. See if that gives us anything better. So we have food, we have the grant key 1, and that's for food. We have grant key 4, which is for food, grant key 6, which is for food, grant key 9, which is for food, grant key 11 is, I think, is it for food or is it rent now? Food. So any of them that are listed as food are under food. And then we should get to a point where we come to childcare, and then it gives all the childcare ones. It's hard to read because my font is so big, but basically what it's done is it's grouped all the food grants together, all of the childcare grants together. You know, so the outer structure is to say there should be a closing. So it closes the service, right? And that service up at the top is rent here. So these are all rents down to where it closes the service. It starts a new service. This is childcare. Where the service closes, that's the end of childcare. Then we start transportation. And so this service is containing it's a little bit deeper hierarchy than the other one. And you could do a deeper hierarchy yet if you had multiple joins, right? So you could do basically subgroups, you know, group things together. And this could be really useful, actually. I think that's all I'm going to show you, though, about pulling XML out of tabular data. You guys have questions about that? Because I think that covers most of what. So you can take the tabular data and you can put it into XML. The other thing I wanted to show you is that you can store data as XML. So I am going to, you guys have questions though? You guys are pretty quiet.
You just hold that.
Sure, I can hold that for a moment. And you can also put, well, actually, I think that's, other than having deeper hierarchies because of more joins. Notice it didn't work though until I ordered it. So you do have to order the list to make it work.
Might that make sense, like you could do a stored procedure or something like that to regularly, you know, take a set of data and make it into an XML form or something like that?
You could do that, sure. You could have a stored procedure to do that. If you look at you can also, I mean, you can always run this query from a client too, if you have direct access to the database in there. You could run that for the XML, and you could retrieve it in an ordered form like this, which could be useful. And you can also, as I said, the explicit one lets you actually design an XML document as you write the query. It's just that it's a fairly complicated. So I'll give you a moment there. Let me know when you're ready to move on. I will post this, of course. And it is being videoed. You could, I have in the past, you could spend a whole quarter on XML and even just XML and databases. There's a ton, we're going to do a few things, but so I'm just going to real quickly do a select star from, I think it's from service grant review. Is it that it? Yeah, grant review. So in grant review, there is a column called grant review note. I'm just going to choose one at random and open it, and it's, again, it's XML. One of the things that started in 2005 for SQL Server is that you could actually start storing XML as XML in the database, right? Before that, you had to store it as text, just as a text file. But now it's you can store it as XML. So this is, I designed a little note. I mean, basically, these are just notes. So there's an element, review note, which is the root. There's a comment, and then there's a list of concerns that you can do, and then a recommendation. So it's a kind of a minimal note, but it's an XML. Why would you do it as XML? Well, there are a couple of reasons you could do it this way. Let's go back here. Just do another one. You can see that there's, you know. This is a namespace, by the way, which complicates your life. Namespaces are for differentiating documents, basically. They usually look like URLs. I'll just mention namespaces because they're in common use, or you should use them. You know, we have concerns, comment, things like that. It's quite possible because there are a lot of environments, different XML documents are intermingled. Because you can invent your own tags, although usually you agree on a set of tags, but once you've agreed on a set of tags, it's quite possible that another document of a different kind could have exactly the same tags as you do. Like when I do paragraphs in an XML document, I often use P. You know, so it could get confused with HTML if you didn't have a namespace. What the effect of the namespace is that every single one of these tags is essentially in the processor. It's http://www.communityassist.org/review notes, comment. That whole thing is basically in front of it as a delineator to keep it distinct. So namespaces are there to disambiguate. I like that word. Things to keep them from being confused. Also, it lets you group things, tells you that things belong together as part of a group. There are some namespaces that are required for different kinds of XML documents, and we'll look at that in a moment. But these do make your life a little bit more complex. So one reason you might want these in here is that you can do, looking for my SQL file, you can do xquery in here. You can actually query them. Having said that, we'll see if I can remember my xquery. So I'm going to do select, we'll do grant review. What do I want? Grant, I was thinking grant review date. Maybe grant key. And then I'm going to do grant review note, not Nate, note dot query. And then I'm going to, and I'm going to pop this down the line. I'm going to try to do a query there, although I think I may go look real quick. I haven't done this since last year, so. I'm going to go to the blog. Syllabus. And blog. And I'm going to do xquery. And okay, so this is the part that I was trying to remember. Okay, so this actually won't be the right things, but it'll give me the syntax. So you want to declare the namespace, except these aren't meeting notes. These are, what was our notes? Is it just review? So down here it's just review, but it's not Seattle Central either. It's Community Assist, right?
.org.
So communityassist.org. Here's the thing. It is case sensitive. Did I do it with caps? I can look. No, they were lower.
All under lowercase.
Everything was lowercase?
Yeah.
And it was review notes?
Yes.
Okay.
C instead of A first.
Thank you. Good eye.
For sure it's spelling sensitive.
Yes, and spelling matters. So then what you do, and what you do is that you do the path. All right. So first of all, you have to declare the namespace so that it gets, because it has to have that tag in front of everything. And then this is called XPath. Now, this is an abbreviation for the namespace, so you don't have to type it every time. Right, MN. And I think, actually, this should be fine. But I need to get the actual, so let me look at the notes. So we start with review note, right, the root, and then we go to comment. So let's just say we want to return just the concerns. So we start off with,
Where did you copy that?
oh, I copied it from my blog, but I'm changing all the, so review notes. I'm just looking at this. So there's comment and then there's concerns. So let's do, we can skip comment and go directly to concern because they're at the same level. Or maybe do we want to just see recommendations? I don't know. Let's look at concerns. 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 Now, do I need, oh, yes. I was looking ahead. I don't know if I need concern. Let's try that, though, too. It wouldn't be from meeting. It would be from grant review. Query. Do I need to make that? It's weird. Query is case sensitive. Very few things are case sensitive in here, but I'm going to try this and see what I get. Nothing for attending. So let's get rid of the concern here. Still not giving it to me.
I think it's review note instead of review notes.
Is that could be?
No, the second one.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Blue is, no.
Is this one S then?
Yeah.
And it is one of the things that can drive you nuts. Ah, it did. So when I do concerns, it gives me the concerns, right? For all of them. One of the things that I would do, if I could remember how, I'm looking for my SQL file again. You can do aware, you know. I might have to look that up though, and I don't know if you guys want to bother with that. I don't know that my example here has any wheres. Oops. I think I was just returning parts. I know I've done it before where I had it. Couple of things about xQuery is that it is a complete query language, right? You can return like where the concern is not none, or where the concern, you know, where a particular kind of concern. And you can query the content of the tags as well as the thing. I'd have to look it up. Do you want me to look it up, or do you want to go on? Indifference.
I'm still working on getting the query to work.
So dot query, this is how you signify that you're going into xquery, right? And then you have to declare your namespace. Give it some kind of abbreviation. And then all of your tags have to have that abbreviation, colon, the name of the tag. And this is a path. This double slash here means basically the tag and all of its children. So and there's actually a longer form. It's been a long time since I've done this, but you can do, tag all of its children. This means just, this and its children. So concerns has a child of concern, and we are getting that. We're only returning the part of the document that has the concerns, right? Let me real quickly see if I can find it really quickly. Actually, so if I do xquery, is this the only xquery I get? Because I've done this like 100 times. $215 April, that's probably, we're in March, right? Same kind of thing. All right, so let's look real quick, just xquery. Node value will work. That looks too complicated. So I don't think I'll do too much on. Oh, yeah, actually we could do that. I think that is actually just we don't have an attribute though. I'm not looking for an attribute. I'll look it up if you want to see it. I think it'll take too long right now. I just wanted you to know that it existed. You may never use xquery. I don't know. But it does exist. And if you wanted to look at, instead of concerns, if you wanted to look at comments, it would be as easy as changing this to comments. What did I call it? Comment? And it shows, each one of these shows a comment and nothing else, right? And again, you could add other criteria too. So say you only wanted the comments on a particular where grant key equals, is there a grant key that repeats more than one comment? I'm sure I see 40. So let's do where grant key equals 40. And then we have just the comments on that grant. Okay. That would be more useful, instead of seeing all the comments, just see the comments on that one grant. All right, so that's xquery. Now the next part, I want to show you how to create a table with an XML column and how to control that column so that it can, if you use a thing called a XML schema collection, you can force that XML to always be the same shape, right? Basically what you can do is you can constrain the XML so it always has to have the same tags in the same order, that kind of thing. Which again is really useful if you're programming it. Couple of things I'm going to do though to do this. I think I gave you the code, the XML code in your assignment, so you don't have to do this, but I want to show this. So let's go create, I'm going to pop out of here and I'm going to externally get Visual Studio just because it's a lot easier. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio 2015. You can do this or not as you wish. We'll create a really simple kind of, and you can copy and paste between the outer one and the not. Come on, open. Yes, it'll work with any version. At least any version in the last 5, 6 years. 10 years, whatever. If it will open. Why does it have new and updated MEF components? All right. What we're going to do is we're going to create a really simple XML document, and I'll show you how to create a schema. Again, you can write your schemas by hand, and there's actually some reasons why you might want to. And typically when companies agree on how their XML documents are going to look, when they, like, what does an invoice look like if you're going to invoice them with an XML document, they usually make an agreement on that. And what they do is they don't write the XML document per se, they usually write the schema. And then they share the schema, right? And then whenever you receive a document, an XML document, you can compare it to the schema. If it validates, if it matches what the schema says it should, then you process it, right? Otherwise, you do whatever your error handling tells you to do. So I'm not even going to make a new project here. I'm just going to make a new file. And one of the types of files that you can make is a XML file. And I'm just going to open it. It doesn't even give you a chance to name it. We can name it after we're in here. So it gives you a whole bunch of template there. I mean, just basically says it's an XML file. Oops. So let's just say, what do we want this XML file to do? Something simple. We need a root. I think the example I had before was meeting. That might be what's in the assignment too. Yeah.
My machine, I can't open Visual Studio. It says it's missing a component. It needs to be installed.
Okay. I mean, as I said, for the assignment, you don't have to do this anyway. Community assist. What do I want to do for this XML document? Anybody have an idea? Just something simple that you would do for a document. Donor notes. How about that? We do other notes. So let's call it donor note. And this will be the root. And I'm going to give it a XMLNS equals, and we'll give it a namespace. And I'm going to say www.communityassist.org. One of the things that drives people nuts is that most of these URL looking things in XML do not lead anywhere. There's nothing there. It's just a tag to differentiate. It does not have to look like a, in fact, we can do the HTTP if we want to, but it doesn't have to look like a URL. It could be like a unique identifier, you know, like the GUID, that kind of thing. It could be any string of characters or numbers you want. The reason why they tend to this is that it gives you some company information. You can put your, you know, it's readable. So there probably, in real life, there probably would be a www. This should be spelled right, community assist. So there probably would be a real website there. There just wouldn't be a place on that called DonorNet. Yeah. So you're providing some company information in your key. So I'm going to close this, and it will give me my closing tag. So what do I want to say here? I'll just call it a heading. I'm not sure what I want in my heading. Let's just say title. Now again, title obviously is a HTML tag, right? But it doesn't matter because we've got this namespace to differentiate it. So even if it's in an HTML document, it should not conflict. So let's just, since it's a note, let's just do note. And do we want just one note? I'm going to allow there to be more than one note. And I'm not going to worry about the paragraphs. Now you can put some content if you want, but mostly I'm just doing the structure. Again, this isn't the way a company would work. They would work on the structure first. But the neat thing about this is, so if I did a title, again, I don't have to put anything in it, but let's put something in it. So big donor, and say, this donor just gave a huge donation. We should spam them for more. Probably not what you would write in here. But so we have a little bit of a note. If I go to the XML menu, notice that there's a create schema. And all I have to do is create the schema. And there it is. We created the schema. This is what they call the Russian doll version of a schema, where everything is just sort of embedded. There's other ways you could structure this that are more readable, but that's what it does when it's auto-generated. The other thing it notes, these are all strings. You can give it different data types if you wanted. I mean, you can change it. So what this says, not that it matters a whole lot for us, but a complex type is a type that can contain other types. So the top element name is heading. It's a complex type because it can contain another type. Particularly what it can contain is title, right? So heading contains title. So it's an element that contains other elements. This says that these have to be in sequence, which means they have to be in order, which doesn't really matter because there's only one thing in there. But This closes that complex type, and then we start another, and it closes that element. And we also say of this element, this next element, unbounded means that it can occur as many times as you want. The name of the element is note, and it's a type of string. Where's the complex type? Did I do body or anything? What did I do there? The main thing to know is that this is, so I did heading. I didn't do like a body, did I?
Mm-mm.
I just did note. You want a body container? I guess it's all right as is. This describes, it's called a schema because it describes not the content of the document, but the structure of the document. Okay.
How did you, can you go back and just show what you did to get this structure?
Oh, so what I did, this is in Visual Studio, right? So what I did, let's since we're going to restructure it, let me put this I'll put it like a body of the note here, and I'll close the body down here. It'll make it slightly more interesting. Oops, forgot to need to close that there. All right, so what I did here, and this is in Visual, what does it not like about that? Should be fine. XML schema, create schema, and then it creates the schema. This is my new schema with the body element. I'm going to kill the other one. All right, so we could save these, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to Control A, Control C. I'm going to copy it. And again, you don't have to create yours. Yours is going to be already, it's in the assignment. You just have to cut and paste it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create an XML schema collection. And we'll call it, so what was the name of that thing? It was donor notes. So let's call donor notes schema. I'm going to just give it the whole schema collection as, and then I'm going to do a single quote, and with luck, it pasted it all. All right, so I pasted that whole schema here. Create XML schema collection, give it a name as, and then just in quotes, you quote the whole schema. So I'm going to run that, and notice it says it completed successfully. So create schema collection, donor notes schema collection as, and then single quote, and then quote the whole schema. Okay. Again, I gave you the schema in the assignment. If you go to the objective, the Object Explorer, where you will find this is under Programmability, Assemblies, actually not Assemblies, Types. And notice there's XML schema collections, and there's two there now. There's donor notes schema collection, which I just did, and there's the review notes, which we were looking at before, those review notes. So there's two schema collections there. And they're considered types because you're defining a complex type. Does that make sense? Okay. Having created that type, I'm going to create a new table. So I'm going to create table let's do donor reviews. And it's not going to have a lot in here, so, but I will do donor review key int identity on primary key. Remember doing tables. I'm going to do donor key int foreign key references I think it's donation, right? So I probably should make this donation key over here rather than donor key. And then I'm going to put the date, I guess. Donor review date. Date. And then I'm going to do the XML thing. So donor, we called it donor note. I don't know if I want to name it exactly the same. It's going to be XML, and then I am going to, in parentheses, put that, what was it, donor, what did I call my schema?
Donor note schema collection.
Yeah, donor note schema collection. Was it note or notes? No. Okay. And what this will do is it will bind this XML column to that schema so that it will have to be in that form, right? If it's not in that form, it'll reject it. Does that make sense? Let's try that. So I'm going to execute that. So I have my new table, and it has its XML data type, and it's bound to the schema collection. And let's insert. So I'm going to insert into donor review. And so it'll automatically do, so I'm going to just do donation key, donor, actually, I shouldn't have to do the date, so just do donor note. Values, and the donation key, I'm going to just randomly choose one. 45. I have no idea what one that one is. I hope there's a 45. And then I'm going to, again, pop out of here just briefly and go get the actual XML file. So I'm going to copy this. And go back to here. Single quotes, paste, close the single quotes. Now, there are ways where you can read the file into this rather than copy the thing in, right? You can just read the file in. So you create a variable, and you do a bulk load into the variable, and then you just put the variable in here. I might try to do that, but right now I'm just doing this as a literal. Just put it in like that. And when I execute, it is perfectly happy. So if I do select star from donor review, and I execute that, you'll see that it has the donor review key, the donation date, this, and it has the note, which may or may not be relevant to that donation because I chose the number by random. Now, if I go back and I make a change to this, there's lots of little things I could change, but let's say I do heading as a capital H. And I'll change this to 40 or just to 4 maybe. Oh, it should still be okay. I'm going to try inserting it again. And I get a XML validation error, invalid contact. It's expecting, and notice it puts that whole namespace in front of it. Expecting http www.communityassist.org donor note heading, and found heading with a capital H. So it validates it, and it is case sensitive. It validates it, and it says that it's not a valid XML document by this schema. Does that make sense? It won't allow you to enter a document that does not match the schema. And that's good when you're programming against it. That means you know that all the documents in that database, in that field, have exactly the same structure. So if you're programming against it, it's very easy to do that. I think that's everything for XML. Again, took most of your time. Now, when I say everything for XML, we could go on for days, as I said. XQuery, which I'm really rusty at because I never use it, but XQuery is a really complex language, and we could, you could get to where you can query, literally find anything in an XML document you want. Questions? I will comment and post. So if you look online, you'll find that there's one of these every quarter. And there is a videotape, so it shouldn't be too hard. The XML that you need for the assignment is online in the assignment in Canvas, so mostly it's just doing a couple of queries and doing this. So next week, I don't have new stuff. If you want me to cover something, let me know and I will. Right, because there's a lot of stuff we didn't cover. You can have the time to work and catch up if you need to. So most of you are in pretty good shape, actually. Finals week, there will be no classes, but I will be around if you need help. Couple other things is that you should be getting an email saying that there is an evaluation available. I'm using the new one, so they don't do it all at one time. You have quite a while. You have like until the end of the quarter to do it. The trouble with that has been that people just don't do them. Also, what?
I'm sure that includes a number of us.
The other thing is that I think it emails you by whatever email account you have in Canvas, whatever you registered with. And it's amazing how many of those email accounts are invalid. So if you don't have a valid email account in Canvas, I don't know. I will put a link to the page in Canvas too, just in case you don't have it doesn't come to you. I would like to hear what you would like. This class, you guys went, I mean, it may not feel like it, but I think you guys sped through things a lot faster than I thought. I probably would have added like one more assignment. But I usually, when you start off, if I say there's a certain set of assignments, I figure that's sort of a contract. I can't just start adding things at the end. But if you do want to cover some other stuff, and let me know, or more depth, because this is kind of like a survey over the surface of a lot of this. There is easily room for a second level of SQL, but I'm not sure there's an audience for it. That's something there. And if you need deeper SQL, you can usually on your job figure, if you have the basics, figure out what you need, you know, at that point. But again, if you need some, want something more to cover, let me know. I'm going to stop the video.